They marched across the field, leaving the group behind. "I suppose you would like to say hello to our resident drill sergeant," Cadmus said, gesturing towards Snow White and her ragtag crew of soon-to-be soldiers. He led them toward the group. As they got closer, Sabrina noticed that the former teacher was dressed in full army fatigues. Her recruits ran in place. She called them worthless, weak, and spineless maggots. "No, one heaven!" Granny cried. "Getting these plebes into shape," Miss White said, never taking her eyes off her troops. "Have you come to volunteer? We can use all the soldiers we can get." "Oh no, I think I'm a little too old to go to war," Granny replied. "That's a shame. How about you, Henry?" Snow said. "Now that you're up and at 'em, you could make yourself useful. It would be nice to have one of the Grimm boys helping out." Henry shook his head vigorously. "We're leaving town as soon as we can." "Can't say I blame you," Snow replied. "No one is safe here. Homes are being searched without warrants. Property is being repossessed without cause, not to mention the disappearances. Rhoda, your son is a point. I'd go with him if I were you." "I'm not leaving," Granny Rhoda said firmly. Henry scowled. "So, what's the scoop on you and the prince?" Daphne asked. "Daphne, don't be rude," Veronica admonished. "No worries, Veronica. The girls have been privy to my soap opera of a romantic life for quite some time. If you must know, Billy proposed." "Gravy!" Daphne cried. "And I declined," Snow added. "What? Why?" Granny asked. "Well, he's arrogant, he's mean, he's selfish," Sabrina said. "Sabrina, that's not nice," Veronica said. "She's not wrong," Henry said. A gray goose hobbled over to the group. "A new group of refugees has just arrived. Snow and one of them is asking for Geppetto." It honked. "Geppetto front and center!" Snow demanded as she turned back to her troops. An elderly man covered in mud fell out formation and ran to Snow White. He saluted her nervously. "Yes, sir," he shouted. "Geppetto!" Granny cried. "You're training to be a soldier?" Geppetto nodded. "Absolutely. I want to do my part. My toy store is in ashes anyway. They burned it to the ground when I refused to take an oath to this hand. It's time to fight back." The rest of the troops let out an exuberant hurrah. "Well, it appears you have a visitor, maggot," Snow shouted, though there wasn't enough venom in her voice to really make the insult believable. "Let's go see who it is." Everyone followed Snow and Geppetto across camp. A throng of excited Everafters gathered in the courtyard to welcome the new refugees. When they entered the gate, they were met with hugs and cheers. Sabrina and Daphne squirmed their way to the front and watched the reunions. Geppetto reported to King Arthur, who held a list of people entering the fort. "Sir, I was told there was someone looking for me." "Oh yes, the kid. Over there," he pointed. Sabrina spotted a small boy sitting on an overstuffed traveling bag. He appeared no older than Daphne and wore a pair of red overalls and a button-down shirt. A quail feather stuck out from his yellow hat. His face was angular, his nose a bit pointy, and he had a pronounced overbite. His expression was tired and impatient until his gaze landed on Geppetto. At once, his face split into a wide, toothy grin. "Papa!" he cried. "Dearest Papa!" "Papa?" Sabrina and Daphne repeated. Son, is it you? Tears gushed from the corners of Geppetto's eyes. He rushed to the child and, in one quick motion, scooped him off the ground and swung him around in his arms. You've come back, Geppetto sobbed. Is that... Daphne couldn't finish her question. She was biting down hard on the palm of her hand. Pinocchio! Henry exclaimed. That's the Pinocchio? Yes, Liebling, it appears Pinocchio has finally returned, Granny Rhoda said, a happy tear sliding down her cheek. Geppetto was a family friend, and the Grimms knew the toy maker's heart had been broken the day he was separated from his son nearly 200 years ago. Gravy, Red said. Sabrina wanted to be happy for Geppetto, but an odd bitterness stabbed at her heart. Instead of joy, she felt envy. His family reunion was filled with delight, while her own was less than perfect. She looked to her father, hoping the scene wouldn't be lost on him, but he was busy talking to King Arthur about possible ways out of the forest. My little pine seed, where have you been? Geppetto asked his son. Why didn't you get on the boat with me? I've been a mess for so long, worrying about you. I'll explain it all in good time, Papa, Pinocchio said. Just let me embrace you one more time. He talks funny, Puck said. The boy had a thick Italian accent, and his words had an air of sophistication, like he was an adult rather than a little kid. You smell funny, Sabrina grumbled. Puck raised an arm and sniffed his armpit. Can't argue with you there. I thought Pinocchio was a puppet, Daphne said to her grandmother. He was, Granny Rhoda said. But after he proved he could be good, the Blue Fairy granted his greatest wish, to be a real boy. Where has he been all this time? Goldilocks wondered. Arthur's giving me directions to a path that will take us out of the woods, Henry interrupted. Girls, say your goodbyes. We're leaving. But Uncle Jake is hurt, Daphne said. Besides, that's Pinocchio. I want to get his autograph. Daphne, I've had enough of your back talk, Henry snapped. Be a big girl and get your suitcases. We left them in Charming's hut. Daphne huffed and stomped off toward the cabin. Rhoda, are you sure you won't come with us? Veronica begged. Veronica, you know I can't go, Granny said. If the family abandons Fairport Landing, the barrier will fall and this chaos will spill out into the surrounding towns. The Everafters need us now more than ever. Jacob is still here, Henry said. When he feels better, he can take over the responsibility. Jacob is a free spirit. I'm surprised he stayed as long as he has, Granny said. No, the responsibility is mine. At least go back to the house, Henry begged. The protection spells will prevent anyone from getting inside. A hurricane could hit that house and you'd still be safe. Just don't get involved with this. Wait until it all blows over. I don't want you to end up like Dad. Granny Rhoda's face fell with disappointment, but Henry didn't notice or chose to ignore it. I'll let you know where we end up, he continued, then turned to call for Daphne, who was dragging the suitcases with great effort. Come on, Daphne, don't dilly-dally. We've got a train to catch. Daphne slammed Sabrina's suitcase to the ground. Carry your own bag, traitor. What did I do? Sabrina cried. Daphne ignored her. She hugged Granny and Mr. Canis and said goodbye to the others. Then she stomped off to wait by the gate. So I guess I'll see you when I see you, Huck said to Sabrina. Yeah, I guess, she muttered. As much as she wanted to leave Fairyport Landing, it didn't feel right to go now. Not with a war brewing. Some of the Everafters might be hurt. Granny might need them. Puck might need them. Come on, Sabrina, her father said, grabbing her suitcase and leading her and Veronica to the main gates. Seconds later, they were marching out into the forest, leaving the camp behind. Sabrina looked back one more time, just as the gates closed. Puck stood in the entrance, hands on hips, his wings flapping in the sun. Granny was next to him, smiling through tears. Red stood next to her, trembling in fear. Goldilocks handed Granny a handkerchief, and Mama Bear wrapped a furry arm around her shoulders. Mr. Canis leaned on his cane. I should thank them, Sabrina thought. I should tell them that I love them. But the gate closed before she could utter a single word. They traipsed through the woods, seemingly without any sense of direction. Sabrina thought she had seen most of the forest surrounding Fairyport Landing. After all, she had been chased through it by enough monsters, but nothing looked familiar. She hoped they weren't lost. It wasn't long before Henry was forced to stop and consult the crude map he had gotten from King Arthur. While Veronica offered help, he held up his hand for silence. He's like this in the car too, Veronica muttered as she watched her husband turn the map over and over. Daphne sat on a stump and sulked, her head tilted downward. Well, that's new, Veronica said to Sabrina. I don't think I've ever seen your sister angry. Stick around, Sabrina replied. It's pretty regular these days. You two have changed so much, Veronica sighed. We've been through a lot, Sabrina said. We had to adapt. Henry tucked his map into his pocket. Okay, I know where we are. It'll take about 2 hours to get to the train station. If we hurry, he checked his watch. We should be able to catch the 6:17 to Grand Central. So, Henry, we're just going to stumble into New York City with no money and no place to sleep? That's your plan? Veronica asked. Henry shook his head. I have some money, enough to get us a hotel for the night. Tomorrow we can tackle our bank accounts. Tomorrow's Sunday, Veronica said. The banks will be closed. Henry stumbled right to himself quickly. I'll figure something out. Daphne and I slept in plenty of homeless shelters when we ran away from foster families, Sabrina offered. I know which places will take us. Oh, goody, Veronica cried sarcastically. Our problems have been solved. Henry fumed. I would rather have us sleeping in a gutter before we spend another night in this forsaken town. I know you don't agree with how I'm doing it, but I'm going to protect this family. I can't do that if we're in Fairyport Landing, surrounded by this ever-after craziness. And to be perfectly clear, I don't want anyone in this family around any ever-afters. And that includes the one who live in New York City. Veronica's face fell. You were eavesdropping? You lied to me. I had to. I knew you wouldn't approve and I was trying to help. Isn't that what Grimms do? Don't throw that silly catchphrase at me, Henry snapped. Well, Veronica steeled herself. Now that the secret's out, you must know that there are at least 200 ever-afters running around Manhattan. So, if you're trying to... That seems to be the end of this video. I'll send more later. Goodbye.